Okay, got it. Okay, so I am actually going to start recording, but we will give it another minute. All right, folks in Facebook world, stay tuned. We're about to share some really great information about building generational wealth. Oh, I love it. Are you excited, Christyle?
I am super excited. Woo!
Yes. Good deal. All right, let's see here. Do a little something here. Great. We are going to start in about 30 seconds. So if you're trying to come on, get on now. We have some good content. I'm going to start in about 30 seconds. Do you remember Pam Skinner?
Yes.
She said hi. Pam is on.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Pam.
Love Pam
right.
Skinner. Love her.
TIAA in the house.
My alma mater.
Yes. I posted something on LinkedIn just about, I'm doing the estate planning ABCs, and I was up to the letter R, and R is up for retirement planning, and just had to give a shout out to TIAA.
I saw that.
Okay, yeah. I talk about it in the book too, and maybe we'll come to it. But I want to welcome everyone. It's 6 o'clock, and I want to welcome everyone to the Facebook Live. I get so excited doing these live streams because it gives me an opportunity to go a little bit deeper into some of the content that's in the book. And, this is something that was, birthed last year, labor of love. And this is an opportunity for those of you who haven't read it or who've read it and said, I want more information. These Family Strong conversations are the place to be in order to have the deeper conversation. So thank you all for tuning in, whether you're live or you're watching it later on. I hope you get something great out of it. And I am super excited that I have Miss Christyle Russell. And I always want to say Crystal Jackson Russell, but that's a lot, a mouthful to say. And I'll do a little introduction in a minute. But, I've known Christyle for a lot of years. I don't even want to do the math now because it'll date all of us, but it's been a while. And when I thought about this topic, this was something that I knew she's the perfect person to speak to it. And thank you also, Christyle, because you were one of the first people that, I shared the book with, and I'm just remembering you have a testimonial in the book. So thank you for that as well. Yay. So for those of you who are like, I know Christyle, her face looks familiar, or this is the first time you're being introduced to her, I want to welcome her to the show. And, if you go to her LinkedIn profile, there is a lot of information there. So I had to try to condense it to the very basics, if that's even possible. So I'm going to try, and then I'm going to ask Christyle to take it from there. But she is a top award-winning visionary leader who has been the catalyst for multi-million, that's $1 million bottom line impacts for Fortune 100 companies, and she's an industry leader in the Fortune 100 space. She has over 30 years of working in the financial services industry, and she started when she was 2. So that's why she looks so great now. Christyle, welcome to the show. And why don't you do a little bit more of an intro as to who you are and why you do the work that you do?
Okay, I most certainly will. But first of all, thank you for inviting me on. I had some wonderful predecessors because I follow, your, I call it tea time. I follow your time as it relates to Family Strong conversations, and it's just been phenomenal. So, with Sean, it's just awesome. She's a beautiful person. And then you have Dawn with her jewel drops. That's phenomenal. So hopefully I can just live up to the tribe in terms of the bar that they've set. So it's just been a phenomenal time. Kudos to you on this book. It is incredible. Just a little bit, you said almost everything as it relates to me. What I will share with you is, currently, you mentioned 30 years in the industry. I have spent the last 30 years as a financial services professional, and I've done an array of things. Right now, I have my own practice, and in conjunction with New York Life. And one of the reasons why I decided to retire from corporate, and as a matter of fact, I thought I would retire from corporate and do nothing.
Ooh.
But I thought, oh, gee, it would just be so nice to retire. And then when you retire, you're thinking, but what do people do when they retire? I did not plan that out, and I should have. And I tell people a lot, plan your retirement, plan what you're gonna do. But one of the reasons why I decided to move forward as a financial services professional and work with individuals as it relates to creating multi-generational wealth and having them understand multi-generational wealth strategies is just because I'm concerned about just not our generation, Michelle, but our children's generation and their generation. And growing up, I used to hear, I have mine, so you're going to have to get yours, right? Yes. When I leave this earth, I would have enjoyed everything that I created. And since I created you to be self-sufficient, then you go out and create yours. So I will tell you that is a driving force behind what I do. And the other thing that's a driving force is it has to do with, I don't want people to end up starting off their careers with a situation that I started off with. And I'll explain that.
Okay.
As I mentioned before, worked in the financial industry for many, many years. I've worked with Shearson Lehman Hutton, and then I went from Shearson Lehman Hutton, which is a Robinson Humphrey company in Atlanta, Georgia, to Fidelity. One day I was in Fidelity, and I'm in an area where when they call you, when people are calling in for trades, they'll call in for the trade, and there's a lot of noise. Yeah. So one day in the midst of all the noise, I get a phone call. And the phone call was my mother, and she said, "Hey, Chris, I need you to come home." Mm-hmm. And I'm in the middle, in my mind, I'm in the middle of my little 20-ish-year-old mind. I'm in the middle of Wall Street action.
Yeah, you're living your best life.
I'm like, I'm in my zone, Mom. I can't come home. And she said, no, it's a non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, when your Southern mother says it's a non-negotiable, all you say is yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So I went from driving, and she didn't tell me why. I went from driving from the Atlanta Financial Center in Buckhead all the way to Southwest Atlanta, where my mother lived, in the middle of rush hour, in the middle of humidity. I got to her driveway. She jumps in the car and says, "Hey, I need you to take me somewhere," without telling me where. We went to the hospital.
Oh, gosh.
We were greeted by a priest. And I thought, well, that's nice. People just, they just greet you when you're coming to the hospital. I had not many experiences with hospitals. So I thought, oh, how nice. How are you doing today as well? And then the doctor comes in and they says, "Miss Jackson, would you like to see your husband now?" And that was the point in which I thought, there's something wrong with Dad. What's going on with Dad? Yeah. And so we went in and we saw my dad, who had an aneurysm earlier that day. So he was completely brain dead, and he was laying there, and I was in complete shock. And I say all this to say, my dad had a wonderful career. And like most of us, we will go from, one company in the same industry to another company. He had just recently gone to another company. Wow. And oh my gosh, he was at that point in time, he was on life support. And my mother kept him on life support because she wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to process it and say goodbye.
Yeah.
And I told my mother at that time, it's going to be okay. Well, I didn't know that it was going to be kind of okay. Because when I got home, I said, okay, let's try to prepare ourselves and get these things together. And let's call his employer. Let's figure out the insurance piece. And she says, your father handled all of that. And because he went from one company to another, the insurance piece wasn't quite in play.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, and I say all this to say, wow, you know, my mother was from an era where the guy, the man of the house handled all of this situation. She was just in that space.
Yeah.
And when you peel back all the layers, my father was an excellent saver, but not so much on the insurance side, not so much on the let me plan for legacy piece of things. And I just thought, gosh, with a little bit of conversation, we would be in so much of a better place.
Wow.
And just, so that's what keeps me going and keeps me in a space of saying, you know, if you're within 6 degrees of separation from me, like if you're in 6 feet, I'm asking you what your plan is.
Yes.
Because I just don't want people to end up 27-ish years old, you know, trying to bury their father, grieve, help your mom out, and do all of those things. It's early in a career. I just want to make sure that there's awareness behind these types of things. So I know that was long, but that's what keeps me in the space that I am.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. That's a deep and powerful why. And as you were saying it, it brings up the thought of, you know, especially when we are counseling or people who are about to retire or just being in that space. And I remember so clearly that you would have at TIAA, as an example, you would have the participant's spouse come in who had no clue as to what the assets were. The participant had died. Most likely it was a male who died first, and now the female was trying to figure all of this out. And I said too, that experience really helped shape that I need to make sure that I know what's going on, and that as a woman, I'm not relying on someone else to know where the assets are and what to do with them. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So it kind of goes to this quote that, so first of all, everyone that's watching, all the viewers, what we're talking about, I'm here with Christyle Russell, and we are talking about the gift of preparation. And she just shared a story about how that was impactful in her own life. And the chapter in the book, it's chapter 4 in the book, but it starts off, someone sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree long ago. And that quote is attributed to Warren Buffett. And so my question to you is, who is that person who planted a tree for you that now is providing shade for you and for the generations to come?
Wow. That's absolutely outstanding question. What I will say is it's my father.
Yeah.
It's just my father and his father.
Okay.
So my father had, as I mentioned before, is a very strong saver.
Yeah.
But in your book, you mentioned things about the intangible. There's the tangible and the intangible, right?
That's right.
And for me, the intangibles are all about the experiences that you have with your loved ones that shape you, you know, that mold you and shape you, you know, in terms of who you are today. So, you know, my father was the one who taught me, how to count money when I was really, really young. So I would go to wherever he was going, I was going, because I thought I could get a little bit of candy, you know, a little bit of money. But, you know, it was a lesson. It was a lesson. He would give me $1 or a quarter or $10, and I would buy not what I wanted, but within the parameters that he would allow me to buy, maybe some candy, because that's what it was. And I would have to count back the change. And he would ask me if it was correct, right? He would do that. So it would start off with a quarter, and then it escalated to $1 and then $5 and then $10. And one day he gave $100. And he said, count back the change. And I was in sheer shock, Michelle. I said, and he paused and he said, well, think about it. The last time we came, I gave you a 10. This is just another 0.
Ooh, come on now.
And from that day forward, my personal relationship with money it's not an intimidation issue. It's another 0 that helps you get to where you need to go. So it was my father who did that. And he would also, because he would not let me spend all of his money, he would also say, save some for a rainy day. He was an excellent saver. You always have to have something in the event that something happens. So that is why I am the way that I am today. It's just simply because of him.
That's so good. And there's so many things to take apart from that. But I think the biggest one is that as parents, and whether you have children or you have nieces, nephews, whatever that may look like, to teach them these lessons and to take away when you think about $100, and I don't know how old you were, but that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for people now. But really letting them see that, okay, it's $100. It could easily be $1,000 and it could easily be $10,000, but you still need to know what you have, how much you should be expecting back in return, and then also planting that seed to save for that, whether it's a rainy day, maybe it's even to give back to somebody else,
right.
But recognizing that that you have an obligation of responsibility with what you've been given. So kudos to Dad, shout out to Dad, in doing that.
Right.
And yes, I'm a witness. You are really good with how you handle your business. And you have never met a stranger where you will not share. Talk to me. Let's talk a little bit, and providing some good tips. And I know time is going to run short because there's so much that we can unpack with everything that you do. But let me ask you this, and it kind of goes back to that preparation piece, and it's specifically as it relates to retirement planning. One of the things I'm so thankful for is that one of my first jobs was working for this company that essentially forced you to save for retirement. It was non-negotiable. And at 22, I'm not thinking about what life is going to look like 40 years down the road. At 22, I'm like, whoop, whoop, going to happy hours. And that said, so many people I know, like myself, like others, who may have not thought about, now thankfully I did, but there are others who may not have thought about saving for their retirement. And we know that the earlier you start, the better it is. Can you explain that? And in particular, we hear about this concept called the time value of money. Can you break that down for people in its most elementary form so that folks get it?
So sure, I can take that one. And it's amazing that they don't teach these things in school, But the time value of money simply is the value of your money over time, over a particular time period. That's it. End of story. Now, it can get a little complicated, or not necessarily complicated, but there's a calculation. Okay. There's a formula and a calculation, but that's essentially what it is. And I noticed in your book, one of the things that you did was you gave, simple interest, compounding interest, just kind of showing over time, so you started off with simple, and then you got with this, you shook it up a little bit, and which I was like, okay, now we're talking. This is great. But that's primarily what it is. I mean, when I was growing up, interest rates were in the double digits. You get 10%, 11%. Right now, it would be hard to get 0.40%. But that's really what it is. And when you talk about retirement planning, the one thing that I can say, about my personal experience of retirement planning, which is very similar to yours. I actually got it started maybe a little bit earlier before I had worked with TIAA. So got started really before TIAA. And that is, with retirement planning, we have something in the industry where we say it's time in the market, not timing the market, right? So we always say, plan early, start early. And whatever your early is, start then. So if today is your early, then we just need to start today. And there are a couple of principles behind just doing just that when you're talking about retirement planning. And so I'll pause there because I can really go.
I know.
I can really go deep
hold
on
me
that
back.
one. But I would say plan for those major life events as well. So I always, I'm one of these people that will say, start off with the foundations first. My grandmother used to say, you've got to wear your stockings and your slip and all this stuff we used to have to wear when I was growing up. But those were our foundations. Those were the things that we had to wear, right?
And they were called foundations.
And so when I look at financial literacy, financial education, the foundations really start with with protecting who you love, the things you owe, and the things that you own. So I always say that think about that. And in some cases, you can always work with a financial services provider to really strategize about how do you make your protection as a part of your retirement as well. So there's so many different strategies out there, Michelle, that people can look at, but I would say protect yourself first, plan, make sure you prioritize. And this one is also near and dear to my heart, and that's pass on, not pass yourself, but pass on your assets in an orderly and efficient manner. So make sure that happens, because when things come to an untimely demise,
yes,
people will say, well, Aunt Tutu really wanted me to have that. And, I just, having those things in order is just a really wonderful thing. So I digress, but those things are really important to me.
Yeah. But what's good too is when you talked about foundations, and I like that analogy of, of what a lot of young women had to do growing up, and to make sure those foundations are in place and that it's never too late to start. Because I know that sometimes people may think I'm 50 or I'm 40 or whatever that age is, I'm 60, it's too late. It's never too late. Just start where you are.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. And I will say start where whatever your time frame is, just start then. If you're thinking about it, then that's when you need to be starting. Yeah. If you hadn't thought about it, then this is when you need to start.
That's right.
The earlier you start, the better, you've got the time value of money that's working for you. So you have time that's working for you.
That's good.
So it just, it's just that simple, And I always say, when people think about creating wealth and building wealth and, being financially independent, I just always say, it is a discipline. If you've ever had a child and you had to change diapers day in and day out, right? And you were disciplined about that, you made that happen. Well, when you're planning to create your wealth, it's a discipline. Yeah. It is something, it is just a discipline. And sometimes it's just not that exciting, although people may want you to think it's not all, it's not a party situation.
No, it's like working out, right? Where no one really, well, maybe some people do, but a lot of people don't really like to do it, but they know that they have to implement that discipline and build those financial muscles in order to get the results, that they're looking for. Absolutely. Yeah. I want to make sure I talk about this because, it's no secret that the past year and a half has been a bit much for a lot of us. And in particular, how it's impacted our families and the transitions that have taken place within the family structure. I know that you talk a lot about family money transitions. Can you just talk a little bit about what that is? What do you mean by that?
I'm trying to see if I can say it succinctly enough within the time that we have. But when we talk about, I will just say this. Yeah. You mention it in your book around is it the 5 Ds? Is it the 5 Ds? You mention it and it's in an attorney type of way, but it resonated with me and just, immensely. Well, what I will say is this, in terms of money and transitions, it's all about where you are. It's all about where you are in your own space. And so what I mean by that, I'm going to throw out a number, and that number is 28,000. Do you know what that number represents at all?
I do not. And my competitive side is like,
okay,
girl, think.
So 28,000 is the average amount of days that people live in the United States.
Ah.
And so if I wanted to transfer that into years, it's around 76.7 years. Okay. If I just average that up, Michelle, to 80, and I separated it into 4 quadrants.
Yes.
0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, and 60 to 80. There are things that happen within those time frames. For example, 0 to 20, you're having a lot of fun. You're spending your parents' money. You may have a part-time job and you may be going to school, right? And then when you're 20 to 40, you're getting your first job. What are the other first? Your first car.
Yes,
you know,
marriage, maybe, children.
First, I'm going to say first marriage, because there are a lot of things that happen with COVID. You know, your first children, first car, first home, all those first. And then when you move from 40 to 60, you might have a second job or career. A lot of people are getting side hustles, or they're getting elevated in their careers. So there are transitions and items that need to take place during that time frame. The first car is now, old. Maybe getting a new car. And your children are starting their first quadrant. They're 0 to 20. They're having fun. They're spending your money. They're wanting to go to school. And then 60 to 80, most people are wanting financial independence. Most people don't say retire these days, because a lot of people just want to have financial independence to do what they want to do.
I love that.
That
term.
So there are transitions within that. COVID just brought on a couple of things. One, those are job transitions, maybe, right? Family conversations that needed to take place, because within those 4 quadrants, there are 4 fears. Fear number 1 is most people don't think that they're going to be able to make it to 60. So they don't think that they're going to live to 60. And if they live to 60, most people don't think that they'll be able to work to 60. So that's fear number 2. And then fear number 3 is, I don't know how much money I need to retire from. My fear is that I won't have enough.
Right.
And if I do, I may have some, debilitating issue or some memory issue. Something that I'll need extended care that will take all of my retirement. And then I'm going to tell you, fear number 4 is that I may not be able to leave a legacy or a foundation for my children, be it college education or be it legacy. So those transitions are things that happen. COVID sped up a lot of it, because you had to have conversations around it. And that's a lot about, I would just say, within my family, having conversations is the first thing you should. Having a conversation about, how you want to build your empire, the way that you want to build it. That's the first step. Most of our families don't have those types of conversations.
Like you said, it goes back to what you said at the very beginning, kind of what's mine is mine. I built it, I got it, so now you have to get yours. It's that element of secrecy and being vague and ambiguous. It's just like, make it plain. Why do we complicate things for the next generation? And even if the thing that you did, they may not aspire to, but at least you've laid out your blueprint, so that they're not having to spin their wheels trying to figure out what it is. So, Oh, all right. Again, there's so much here. All right. I know time is doing what it does, but let me ask you this. Someone who's listening right now and they're saying, okay, Christyle, okay, Michelle, I really want to start being intentional about the wealth that I am building for my family. Can you give just 1 or 2 tips, suggestions to share with that person? And look, I'm taking notes too, so.
I'm going to go right back to planning. Go right back to planning. The first thing that as I said before, I would look at the best love letter that I think that you can give yourself and your family is the gift of protection. I've seen way too many, our millennials have, you know, the iPhone 9000s and they have insurance on it. Those things are protected, all that plastic and glass. It's so protected, it's incredible. But did you know, Michelle, that for the same millennial that's 20-ish years old with the iPhone, you know, 1000,
Yeah.
the insurance that they pay on that, you know, if you run the numbers, more than likely they could protect their lives for the same amount, you know, protect their lives at such a young age. So I would say, you know, really focus on the foundations first. I'm a foundations first kind of girl, because you know what, if the foundations aren't there, you can build a beautiful retirement plan. It can have all the bells and whistles. But if something happens where you need care, you know, a critical illness, it will take those retirement. I've seen it.
Yeah.
It will take those retirement assets. So I say start there. The other thing that I would do is start early. As I said before, whatever your early is, do it. Okay. And strategize with it. So here's one little nugget that I will really give you. Ensure that I'm the type of person that I like for my money to do multiple things, right? I like multi-purpose money.
Yes.
You know? And so, you know, I'll just share, and I'll share with you, you know, with my mother, we had a critical illness policy, you know, and a critical illness policy, a long-term care is what we say today, but a long-term care policy. But that long-term care policy had multiple things. Okay. You know, if she never needed it, then that money would come to me as my retirement, right? So it had multiple purposes. I didn't plan it that way. I just knew that I was always in the financial industry. I might not ever, you know, I won't spend all of my time in Atlanta, Georgia, although I love the ATL. Yeah. But I knew I would not be close. There's a potential that I would not be close to her, but I wanted to make sure she was taken care of. So I say this to say, whoever you're working with, ask them, does this do multiple things for me? Does it meet multiple goals? Let's strategize a bit, because I go back to the person who says, I got mine, you get yours. For the cost that they got theirs, they could have strategized to ensure that you got yours also. And so I just want to make sure that, you know, I just got to chill, because I get really excited about I just got chills.
And it's so good, because what you're sharing, I think a lot of people do not know this information, even when you talk about the critical care piece, the long-term care insurance. And like I said, that's like, look, I got a part 2 with you, and now I got a part 3 just to talk about that component as well. But these are just such important critical elements to share with individuals, because I don't think that people thought about, wait a minute, my insurance policy can multitask, or, you know, my investment can multitask. Talk to Christyle. Absolutely. I will just add to that tip is get you, and I said, yeah, get you a legacy team. Get yourself a group of individuals who know what it is that they're doing. And look, if y'all don't have somebody, you need Christyle, because she can help you. It's the truth. It is the truth. As we start to go, actually, we're going to transition and close. I know you shared the story about your dad earlier. Is there, and I shared that quote about, you know, being planted and reaping the benefit of someone else's planting, sitting in that shade. Is there a quote or another story that you want to leave everyone with?
Perhaps not a quote, but I'll leave you with a story. Okay. And I'll say, know who's sleeping in your bed. And what I mean by that is my life always begins with phone calls. I received a phone call from my brother one day. I was in Chicago, and he called me. He went to visit. He had been out of town and went to visit my mom. And as you know, my mom passed away this last December. He went to visit my mom, and he called me and he says, hey, someone's sitting in mom's chair. Someone's watching mom's TV. And guess what? All of their items are in your room, and they're sleeping in your bed. And he was not himself. You know, he was not, I could hear it in his voice. He was not himself. And we knew that my mother was diagnosed with with Lewy body dementia. We had known that, and we had a care plan in place, right?
Yeah.
And what we did not anticipate is, and I say this because COVID has brought all of us together, a lot of us together. We're in the same room. You know, we got to have these conversations. We just didn't know the timing in which we were going to initiate that care plan. And someone in our neighborhood who I grew up with had moved in my mom's house and tried to sublet the house.
Wow. So like a squatter situation.
So I say, you know, we never had the conversation with my mom about who's her who person. That's, I know that sounds Dr. Susie, who's going to care for her, and how. Me and my brother had a care plan in place, right? And as you know, we had long-term care in place as well. But have the conversations. I can't stress that enough around, if something happens to you, who's going to be that person that takes care of you? Do you want them to coordinate your care? Or do you want them to care for you? Are you going to live in their house or not? Or is there going to be someone else? So I say, I'm leaving this with you because this shook our world. You know, to have someone that we trusted, that we grew up with, to yield that type of end result, to my mom was saddening, right? So I say this to say, make sure we have the conversations in place, know who your who people are, get your team together, you know, have the wills and everything in place. you know that best. Have everything in place, and just, you know who's sleeping, get to know. And if you don't know, ask the questions, ask. And if people are not asking, ensure that, and ask again. So I just say, have the conversation, raise awareness, and, and I think you're going to be better off. I think you'll be a lot better off, because you got to protect this generation first before you try to build into the other generations. So that would be my advice.
That's a whole word right there. And I know that someone needed to hear that, because they need to know who is the who that is doing whatever it is that they're doing. And we know that unfortunately people take advantage of situations at times as well. So I'm glad that you and your brother were on it. And my condolences again about your mom, because, well, we're not even gonna go there, but just know that, yeah, she raised a good one right there. Christyle, I am so thankful and so grateful for you. Tell everybody how they can reach out to you. First of all, let me just say this. You all need to reach out to Christyle and get her on your team, because when I say she has just literally kind of scraped the surface of things, I've had so many deep conversations with her, books that she's recommended, strategies that she's shared with me. She can go so much deeper than this. And I just want you to reach out to someone who knows the game, has been in this for a long time, and really has the heart of someone who wants to serve and be of service to those who may not have been exposed to some of these ideas and principles. And if you have a business, that's a whole nother show. We'll get to that in another few months, but we're going to have Christyle back on to talk about that. So Christyle, let folks know how they can reach out to you.
I'm on Facebook. I am on Facebook. So it's probably under Style Russell, just so I can keep them both separate. It's under Style Russell, and it shows up as New York Live. So I have some really exciting really exciting things going on, but I'll just share you my number. It's 720-822-1292. And that's 720-822-1292. It is also on my website as well.
Perfect. And we'll make sure to share that in the show information so people have access to that as well. Well, this has been rich in so many different ways, and I hope people have taken something from it. Please share your comments. I haven't been on Facebook, so let me just take a quick look to see if there's anything that I needed to see. Okay, nope. So I'm going to echo. We don't want that. So thank you all for watching. Thank you again, Christyle, my Georgia Peach, and my sorority sister. I forgot to include that in the beginning too. I love you. Thank you so much. And the next show will be in September. Guest and topic, stay tuned. You don't want to miss that. So you'll hear more about that later on. But for now, have a wonderful evening, everyone. And thank you for watching and tuning in. Take care.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome. Yes.
Best to you.
Thank you, my dear.
And get this book. I love this book. It is just phenomenal.
Oh, yes. Well, before I start the live on Facebook, yes, absolutely. Everybody get the book. FamilyLegacyStrong.com.
Mine has little tabbies and everything in it.
Yeah. See, I love it because you are a student and a scholar at heart. All right, Facebook, until the next time.